Welcome back to the Isaac Newton Institute workshop dedicated to a new horizon in dispersive hydrodynamics. So it's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker of today, Germain Rousseau from Université de Poitiers, and he will talk about analog tidal bore in the laboratory, a review of recent experimental and numerical works.
Thank you, Thibaut. Thank you to all the organizer to organize this nice meeting. I'm learning a lot on dispersive hydrodynamics. To get a flavor of my talk, I will start by this reproduction of a mechanical model of the Severn River by Fred Robotham. So if you take a plunger, here you have a water and you have a convergent chamber. So this will reproduce the uterine shape of an estuary, and then you end up with a river. So this will reproduce a tidal propagation, and then the interaction with the wave, and certainly the labyrinth when you have corners in this river. So I will try to reproduce tidal bore in the laboratory in my presentation, and I'd like to quote Lord Kelvin. It seems to me that the test of do we or do we not understand a particular subject in physics is can we make a mechanical model of it. So I will try to convince you with my little mechanical model today. So first, the natural tidal bore. So the inhabitants of the area of Bordeaux or the Severn, for example, in UK, are quite spectators twice a day when the water is low of a peculiar phenomenon without anyone being notified to investigate the cause or to want to bother to communicate the details to physicists. De La Grave-Sorby was writing this phrase 2 centuries ago. Of course, the situation has changed a little bit, but there are still mysteries with this tidal bore. So here you have some side-seat spots on the Dordogne River where we can distinguish position of the sandbars where the tidal bore first occurs. B is a place where the tidal bore occupies the entire width of the river, or C where the tidal bores are seen with these secondary whelps that you can see here and here, for example. We will see many types of bore in this presentation. So the word bore first appears for the phenomenon in the Severn River as late as the 19th centuries, and it has been linked with the Icelandic bara, which means below or wave, which is a word which indicates a dangerous phenomena since it appears in the Icelandic proverbial equivalent of Skula and Charybdis, the myth of Skula and Charybdis. And this dates back to antiquity when used to say to sail between a rock and a wave. So you see the rock here in the Strait of Messina, and you see the wave here, an example of internal waves. So there's still some science behind this myth of antiquity. So we will look to this bore in the laboratory, and the first one who tried to reproduce this bore in the laboratory was Italian. I know that there are many Italians today. Giorgio Bidone, who was an Italian and physicist engineer, works in Torino. And here I have a plate from Bidone work expérience sur la propagation du remous, where it looks to water channel flow. And here, if we intercept this stream with a gate, you have a wave and an intumescence, a remous, which is propagating in the countercurrent. You can introduce a slope, and if you close twice the gate, the second bore is catching the first one and is propagating faster since the water depth increase. Bidone looks also to the effect of bathymetry. So, for example, if you have a step in the lateral direction, you will see that the bore front will propagate with different velocity. And here, if you have a bathymetry with banks, you see the peculiar shape of the wavefront, which is changing. Then Henri Darcy and his student Henri Bazin introduce dispersion. The bore are undulating, so we have some whelps or stubbles. They look to the fact that these stubble can break partially or even totally. So we speak of undular breaking bore or totally breaking bore. And then Henri Favre, another Henri in Switzerland, introduce a kind of classification for the many surge that can appear when you have a stream. So positive surge from upstream, negative surge from downstream, negative surge from upstream, and positive surge from downstream. And the tidal bore phenomenology enters into this last classification. So Henri Favre either open or close the gate in streams, and he can introduce these many surge, and I will discuss these 4 types of Favre waves in the rest of my talk. Closer to us, Treske in Germany measured for the first time this evolution, and then Boukrieff also looks below the free surface, and he introduced undular breaking bore, flow and particles displacement below the free surface, and in this work, which is now 20 years old. So in Poitiers at CNRS, we are reproducing this tidal bore with a medium open channel. So I will first present this experimental setup. So either we use the old method of Giorgio Bidone, thanks to a gate which is interrupting the stream. We can create an intumescence when the gate is closing. It's closing quite fast, and then the wave will propagate in a countercurrent direction. We use a laser and a fluorescein dye, which is put into the fluid in order to delineate the free surface, and we can use also acoustic sensor to measure the water depth. We have a 3D convergent chamber, so our flow are quasi plug-like, so there's a uniform speed on the entire water column when it is entering the water channel. So let's look to the experiments in real life. So the laser is here, we have the gate here, and we have the convergent chamber here. So we will use the so-called Tron method since the movie with this laser sheet. So we will have a laser line all along the water channel, and we will measure this free surface deformation thanks to a subpixel detection method. When we set up the flow, it is very interesting to see one of the Favre types of wave. Here it is this one, positive surge from upstream with dispersion. Another case here. So as soon as we put the flow into the water channel, and if in the water channel we put the gate, we can have a dynamical water depth. And if now I remove the gate, this movie will please Gennady and Thibault. We see first a negative surge, and then maybe a rarefaction wave, and then a positive surge with ondulation, so a kind of a tidal bore in the laboratory. So we are still using the Bidone method with gate. Either we close them or we open them. I show you once again the movie. So if we open a gate, then the current is flowing from the left to the right, and we see first this decrease of water depth, and then this propagation of this beautiful ondular wave, which is not breaking at all. Okay. So if we measure with acoustic sensor, or if we look with the laser line, we can see the free deformation, and we can, of course, detect it with a pixel accuracy. Today, I would like to introduce a new experimental procedure to create a bore, which is, I think, more natural and more similar to what we observe in nature. Since Bidone, the classical procedure is such that we set a stationary current and a dynamical water depth, we close a gate, and this intumescence is created at the end of the channel by the accumulation of water in the front of the gate. Then a surge wave emerges from the intumescence, and the bore propagates on the countercurrent. We have added in our experimental setup a connected reservoir, so there is no spillway which is completely disconnected from the river channel, like in the Bidone original experiment. So we set a stationary current and a dynamical water depth which is superior to the initial static depth, with a Froude number which is a ratio of the flow and wave speed superior to 1 downstream of the channel. So a spillway is created in the exit chamber, but it is connected to the exit chamber, and when we stop the pump and let the water depth diminish along the channel, an intumescence is created at the end of the channel by the dynamical decrease of the water depth along the channel, and the surge waves will emerge as well from the exit chamber modes of oscillation when the Froude numbers will drop below 1, so the spillway will disappear. So with the spillway is a kind of blocking region for this mode of oscillation of the exit chamber, and then a mini bore will propagate on the dying countercurrent with the time scale of the current inertia, which is longer than the time of flight in the channel. So I will show you this new natural procedure. So we have set up a dynamical water depth, and we are just stopping the pump. And coming from the downstream end of the water channel, we see a positive surge from downstream with dispersion with all these stubbles. This was published 4 years ago. And here I can show you numbers of stubble, which is quite impressive. It can be 50s, for example. You see the many undulations. So we are really doing dispersive hydrodynamics, and the name of the trimester. So I'd like to study these dispersive waves. And so either we look on the side with camera and with a laser sheet, or we can make some space-time diagram by looking to the evolution in time of the water depth. So this is how it looks like with a side camera. So we will extract the interface by interpolating the laser line and the maximum of intensity with the subpixel accuracy. We can go up to 1 or 10 microns of accuracy by looking to this free surface deformation. And this is how the water deformation looks like both in space and in time. And of course, we can reproduce a beautiful space-time diagram. So first with a dynamical water depth, and then there is here a jump, which is decorated by this ondulation. So we can speak of these tidal bore signatures, and here it's clearly ondular one. So we reproduce a phase space diagram of the mini bore, and depending on the flow rate as a function of the initial static depth before setting up the flow rate. So we start the pump, and then the dynamical water depth is generated, and we stop the pump and we observe these bores. So we have several regions. For example, here no bore, then a bore which is propagating along the water channel, which is 6 meters long, but which is just dying because the countercurrent is sufficiently fast to stop the bore. And then the ondular bore I have just shown you with the laser sheet, and we can also observe the transition to ondular breaking bore like Boukreev, and the breaking bore like Darcy-Bazin, for instance. So if we change the initial water depth in the water channel, we can see a transition from no bore here for the small initial water depth to a kind of inflection point. And when you see this inflection point, then you observe the mini bore decorated with ondulations I have shown you. And this is absolutely similar to what is observed in the field. For example, here, a paper from Bonton et al., where we see as a function of the tidal range, the amplitude of the wave at the entrance of the river, that you see that if the tidal range is so small, there is no wave, and then you see the inflection point, and then you have a beautiful tidal bore. So the new method, I think, is more similar to the natural bore which are occurring in the field and in estuary. In order to characterize this bore, we use particle image velocimetry. So we just put some particles in the fluids, and we look with the camera, and we can see here for the short exposure time for the case of the ondular bore, but it can be done with braking and totally braking. You see the ondulation, and we see elephant foot pattern, which is very nice. And even at the very end of the movie, reversal of the water current inside the water channel. So the elephant foot pattern is this one. So here you see the current. Then when the tidal bore is coming, you have a local inversion of the flow, and you see this elephant foot pattern which is occurring, which is really a signature of this ondular bore. If we extend the exposure time, we can also look to the particle trajectories. And you see, we start to see some loops and hat part of the trajectories. And I will try to introduce a theoretical model of wave current interaction in order to explain the origin of this pattern in the circulation just below the free surface. So here, zoom, so we see the hat part, we see some loops, we see some ondulations, and so on. And I will introduce a theoretical model where we have been combining a wave current interaction theory and the water depth change in order to try to explain these experimental particle trajectories visualizations. So with Bruno Simon and Pierre Lubin, we reproduce some tidal bore closing partially or totally a gate. For the moment, I will not insist on the effect of flow reversal. I will come back to this later. But here you can see clearly that you have an ondulation where you have a ratio of 30% of closing. So you have no global flow reversal initially. And here you have local flow reversal when you have total closing of the gate. So this is very similar to the procedure of Bidonnet. And the interesting thing is the foot number is almost the same for both numerical simulation. And we will see that the patterns below are very different. So we'll try to understand this. So we use the so-called Maxey-Riley-Gatignon equation in order to track with Lagrangian methods particle trajectory, both the fluids and the massive particles. I don't have time to enter into this model, but I think it is very well known. So we take into account the drag, added mass effect, gravity, and so on. And so here is an example of the complete closing gate, and we see these beautiful loops here for the in blue the fluid particles, and for example in red for more massive density massive particles. So you see the effect of gravity, and you can have a flow reversal or not. Or in this case, because you have a total closing, you will have a flow reversal, but it will depend on the percentage of opening of the gate. Another case here where we have 30% of opening, you see the trajectory of the particles, and you see once again the ondulation, the effect of gravity on the particle when we increase the density of the particles. So in order to understand this trajectory, we make an analogy with gymnast, and you see the beautiful ribbons patterns which are formed by this gymnast. And another way also to look to this problem is to use an analogy with a viscous thread falling on a moving belt. And depending on the speed here of rotation with respect to the speed of the belt, you can have this ondulating pattern or these loops for the particle trajectories. So what we did is to combine the rising effect of the tide, the gravity effect when you have particles, the slowdown because the wave is encountering a current, and the wave current interaction theory. We use a so-called chain theory, which was published 10 years ago. And by combining all these effects, we are able to reproduce with the theoretical model the trajectory, for example, here for the total closing or for the partial closing. The only difference is the wave current interaction. So look here, you have loops or no loops and ondulation. So depending on the way the tide interact with the flow, you will have only ondulation or these loops. In practice, the river can reverse its direction. So I took a British example with a Severn here at Saxon Lodge. So the flow in the river can reverse or not. That is a question when you have the tidal range, which is increasing from one tide to the other. And you see here the river level and this N shape, which is very signature of the tidal bore in the field. And here you see no flow reversal in this tide, and then the next one you see a flow reversal. So we have to combine our model with the possibility to have flow reversal in the system. So here an example of a time lapse of a flow reversal in this river in UK. So you have seen the beautiful reversal, and you see that the reversal is continuing a lot of time after the wave, the tidal bore has passed. So what we did is to combine the Tethys model of Bruno Simon and Pierre Lubin, which was LES numerical simulations, with our wave current interaction theory. And we introduce 4 cases with or without current flow reversal when looking to the fluid streamlines. And we introduce a terminology, for example, N-roll ribbon-like trajectories without a global flow reversal of the current, but local flow reversal. Here you see the local flow reversal, but no global flow reversal. Here you see no local and no global flow reversal, but ondulation. This was corresponding to the partial blocking case I was just showing you a few minutes ago. And here you see unroll ribbon-like trajectory with a global and local flow reversal. And the last case, the case D, where you have ondulating ribbon-like trajectory with a global, but no local flow reversal. You have just a global at the front, reversal at the front of the tidal bore that you can observe in this case. So if I resume, with or without current flow reversal, we have been introducing this classification in tidal bore theory, where we can observe the case A. So you see it's a cartoon to resume our findings. So you see here the local flow reversal, but no global flow reversal. Here, no local and no global flow reversal. And here you see the global flow reversal in these two cases, but you can see still have a local flow reversal. What is interesting in this case is the fact that you can have a local flow reversal in the bottom of the river, but not close to the free surface. And this observation was done by Henri Partiot more than 1 century ago. It has sometimes been noticed that at the time of arrival of the tidal bore, the change of direction of the current takes place at the river bottom rather than at the surface and near the banks, rather than in the middle of the bed. The flow is felt early on the banks than in the talweg, so that the currents are already rising on the bank when they still go down in the river. In the middle of the Seine, where the tidal bore is shown in the form of an ondulation, the ascending current does not occur immediately after the passage of this phenomenon. Rather, it occurs from the banks towards the middle of the river and form at the bottom rather than at the surface. So now, if we resume, we can see that, of course, depending on the bathymetry in the river, you can have place where the tidal bore is breaking, is ondular breaking, or is ondular depending on the depth. And if you have understood what I have explained to you today, you can have up to these 4 regimes. So that's why it can be very complicated to understand what happens in a natural and real tidal bore in a river because of the effect of the bathymetry. So this is what we did with this slide, last slide. You can see, depending on the injection of the particles, in blue, the fluid particles, and in the different colors, the massive particles, you can have here no flow reversal, or here you can see the beautiful loops I have shown you, and then a reversal, but which is more seeable below the free surface. So we have to take care when we use buoys, for example, if the buoy is on the free surface or below, like in Partiot, we can observe a flow reversal below before observing the flow reversal on the free surface. So I would like to conclude my talk. If you have no question, you should relax like this surfer. But if you have questions, I am ready to answer to them with pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Germain. So do we have any question? So no question in the chat. Yeah, Nicolas, unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for the nice talk, Germain. If I understand, just the take-home message is that it not really matters what is the amplitude of the oscillations. It's rather a matter of boundary conditions.
You can have an effect of the boundary conditions, and in a real tidal bore, you have banks. So as you have banks, close to the banks, usually the tidal bore is a breaking one. And in the deep part of the river, it's more an ondular one. But even if you have an ondular one, you have seen here clearly that you can have up to 4 regimes, depending if the total flow in the river, namely the nominal river current plus the effect of the tide current, is reversing or not. And you can have global flow reversal and also local flow reversal. You have to go deeper into the fluid in order to see what happens.
Okay, and is it right to say the amplitude of the oscillations does not really matter to help discriminating the different cases? I mean, you might.
I don't know. I cannot answer easily to your questions because among the many dimensionless parameters which are used to classify the bore, there are at least two that I know. There is a Froude number, which is the speed of the current plus the speed of the front divided by square root of GH. And there is another one, which is a ratio between H2 after the bore and H1. Usually, yes, when we assume, like Bélanger, that there is no hydrostatic effect, which is not the case clearly for the ondular case, the ratio H2 to H1 is related to the Froude number. It's a linear law, it's quasi-linear. But I think it's more complicated in practice. We should maybe look to the ratio between H2 and H1 plus the Froude number in order to understand what type of bore we are looking at. There is a classification based on the Froude number. I anticipated the question, that's why I put this backup slide now, is the fact that depending on the value of the Froude, the bore is ondulating if the Froude is inferior to 1.43, and if it is superior to 1.47, then it is a totally breaking tidal bore. But I don't, this classification is very ancient. We have just trying to improve it a little bit with numerical simulation recently, but I think it should be improved in order to take into account the non-hydrostatic effect, the ratio between H2 and H1, namely the water depth upstream and downstream. I think there is more work to do. My take-home message today was mainly to insist on the fact that below the free surface, even if the free surface is ondular, you can see we can have at least up to 4 regimes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Nicolas. And Germain, Gennady, you have a question?
Thanks a lot for the talk. Very interesting. My question is, well, there is extremely complicated dynamics happening beneath the bore. Mm-hmm. No doubt. I mean, you demonstrated this very convincingly. But if you look, well, kind of in a nice laminar regime, there is a nice undulating structure, very familiar from the solutions of the known equations. So have you tried to compare or identify, well, what you observe with some of the known kind of probably simplistic, simplified models like Korteweg-de Vries equation or Boussinesq type models? Because, I mean, for instance, the first oscillations looks, I mean, in traditional theory, it is it's approaching a solitary wave. So did you try to compare this with solitary wave and so on? Sorry. Yeah.
I know that lots of people here are interested with dispersive shock wave. For me, the dispersive shock wave are, for example, always increasing in size. The tidal bore reach a saturated amplitude clearly in our experiments. So the dispersive shock wave theory, I think, will not necessarily apply, except if we reach a saturated state. This is first remark. A second remark is that, of course, we have tried to look to simplify model like Korteweg-de Vries, Burgers, for example, type of model, but the KdV Burgers model, we just gave us the free surface deformation. It will not enter beneath the free surface. So this is one question that I have. If I don't know of model, but if people have looked to KdV Burgers type of model which are able to discriminate what happens below the free surface, I will be very interesting to compare our experimental result with this. That's why we introduced this modified chain model where we combine wave current interaction theory plus phenomenological behavior like the rising of the water depth and the slowdown of the speed in order to reproduce, and I think quite nicely, here, if you compare this kind of particle trajectory with the numerical trajectory which are here. So I think that there is more work to be done. And one question is also the transition towards the breaking jump. In natural river, the river is subcritical, but in the laboratory, we can also produce supercritical river flow. And if I close the gate, I also observe some tidal bores. So there is still more work to be done on the classifications, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Germain. There is a comment from Nicola. The spatial extension of the DSW saturates in the presence of damping. So I don't know if it was a question or a comment, but I
Yeah.
think it was a comment.
Yes, you can okay, you can saturate the dispersive shock wave with dissipation. This is what you are saying?
Yes.
Yes, yes. I agree.
So I understand what you observe is very interesting because it seems to be much richer than
Expected.
simple model of dispersive shock wave yields. Still, my first guess when I see your nice picture that it belongs to the to this type of physics still.
Yes. What was, but still we do not exactly understand. We just change the parameters both in the numerics and in the experiments, and we see all this phenomenology beneath the free surface. And if you just look on the free surface, and that's why, for example, if you look here to this time lapse, we understand that we will have a global flow reversal, because we see clearly here the global flow reversal, but it can be with or without a local flow reversal. And then you have to go below to see whether you have this local flow reversal or not.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's very nice.
Okay, so thank you again very much, Germain.